And my mum and dad weren't in a great place, and I hadn't really spent a lot of time with them in the previous decade because I'd been out trying to establish who I was, and I didn't really go home very much. And so what I did is I decided instead of buying an apartment in the city, I'd buy 100 acres in the bush.
He conquered Rome, he conquered Hollywood, and then he disappeared. At the height of his fame, when Russell Crowe could have had anything, any role, any price, any life, he walked away. No farewell tour, no dramatic exit, just silence. For decades, he was cinema's wildest force, the man who fought tigers, rewrote scripts at 3 a.m., and demanded real steel on set. But at 61, the same fire that built him nearly burned him alive. Fame turned into noise, fortune into emptiness, and the gladiator who once ruled the world vanished into the Australian wilderness. Why would a man worshipped by millions trade red carpets for muddy boots? What happened behind the scenes that made one of Hollywood's fiercest icons give it all up? This is the untold story of Russell Crowe, the rage, the fall, and the rebirth of a man who realized that peace, not power, was his greatest victory. Before the Oscars, before the fame, before the chaos, there was just a young man in Australia with a temper that burned hotter than his ambition. Russell Crowe wasn't built for quiet success. He wanted to shake the world until it remembered his name. In the early 1990s, he exploded onto the screen in Romper Stomper, playing a violent neo-Nazi named Hando. The performance was so raw, so disturbingly real, that local police reportedly kept an eye on him for months. Director Jeffrey Wright later said Crowe would vomit before takes, not from fear, but from rage. That was Russell Crowe in his purest form, unpredictable, intense, and completely consumed by the role. That film changed everything. In a few short years, Hollywood came calling. L.A. Confidential turned him into the industry's new obsession, a brutal detective who stole scenes from stars twice his stature. Producer Curtis Hanson warned studios that Aussie's a grenade with the pin out. And he was right. Crowe's energy was unlike anything Hollywood had seen since Marlon Brando. Raw, electric, unfiltered. Casting him wasn't just hiring talent, it was unleashing a force of nature. He'd argue with directors, rewrite dialogue on set, and still deliver performances that left everyone speechless. But behind every explosion of brilliance was a storm that wouldn't stop brewing. The anger that fueled his art was starting to spill over into real life. And soon, that same fire would consume everything he'd built. By the year 2000, Russell Crowe wasn't just another actor, he was a global phenomenon. His portrayal of Maximus in Gladiator turned him into the face of masculine power and emotional depth, the kind of performance that transcends film and becomes legend. But what the audience saw on screen, the courage, the fury, the heartbreak, was more than acting. It was a reflection of who he truly was inside. Crowe's obsession with authenticity bordered on madness. During filming, when a prop master handed him a rubber sword for safety, Crowe hurled it into the sea and growled, "Real steel or I walk." The studio caved. He trained before dawn in brutal Maltese heat, slicing through the air with real weapons until his hands bled. To him, pain wasn't something to avoid. It was part of the truth. That same year, Gladiator dominated the box office and the Oscars. Crowe's intense portrayal of a fallen general seeking vengeance made him Hollywood's new alpha. But he didn't slow down. Just 1 year later, he transformed again in A Beautiful Mind, rewriting one of the film's most emotional scenes at 3 a.m., convinced the moment needed whispers, not screams. The director listened. The film won Best Picture, and Russell Crowe, now at the height of his career, was unstoppable, or so it seemed. Because behind every award, behind every standing ovation, something darker was taking shape. The perfectionism that built his empire was starting to eat away at him. The gladiator who conquered the world was about to face a battle he couldn't win, the war within himself. Fame had made Russell Crowe untouchable, but it had also made him dangerous. The same intensity that fueled his greatest performances began to spill into real life. By the early 2000s, the man who once demanded excellence from every frame was now battling his own chaos behind the camera. The headlines came fast. Bar fights in Canada, a hotel altercation in Paris, and then, in 2005, the infamous phone-throwing incident in New York, a moment that would follow him for years. When his wife's call got disconnected, Crowe snapped. hurling the phone at a hotel clerk. He later admitted on Letterman, "I went nuclear." For a man who built his career on control, it was the moment the mask cracked. But the chaos wasn't limited to anger. His love life became tabloid fuel. During Proof of Life, he fell for Meg Ryan, whose marriage to Dennis Quaid collapsed under the media storm. Their affair made him Hollywood's favorite villain, and for the first time, the public saw not the hero, but the man behind the fury. When that relationship crumbled, Crowe retreated into another, more lasting connection with Australian singer Danielle Spencer. He told Oprah, "She spat beer on my shoe the night we met. I knew she was real still. Even love couldn't quiet the storm. The demands of fame, the sleepless nights, the endless scrutiny. It all took its toll. By 2012, his marriage had unraveled, and the man who once ruled Hollywood was standing among the ashes of his own life. But instead of hiding, Crowe did something few expected. He auctioned off nearly everything he owned: his costumes, awards, guitars, even his armor from Gladiator. He called it cleansing by fire. It was a turning point, not an ending, but a reckoning. The gladiator who once fought for glory was now fighting for his soul, and what he did next would shock everyone who thought they already knew his story. When the spotlight finally dimmed, Russell Crowe didn't chase it. He walked straight into the dark and built a new light for himself. After decades of chaos, he craved something pure, something untouched by fame or ego. So instead of another mansion or movie deal, he bought a vast stretch of land deep in the Australian countryside, 1,000 acres of quiet, dirt, and sky. This wasn't just a home. It was redemption. He called it Nana Glen, a place where his parents could live, his sons could grow, and he could finally breathe. "I realized my boys were growing up between hotel suites," he told The Guardian. "I wanted them to know soil." For a man who'd spent half his life pretending to be other people, the farm became the first place he truly felt like himself. Here, Crowe traded cameras for cattle. He repaired fences after storms, drove tractors, and hand-fed alpacas every morning at sunrise. Locals would see him in worn flannel shirts, boots covered in mud, waving as if he'd lived there forever. He didn't want recognition, just peace. When a neighbor's truck got stuck in the mud during a flood, Crowe showed up with his bulldozer to pull it free, then quietly asked how the man's daughter's cancer treatment was going. No cameras, no headlines, just humanity. This was the man the world never saw. The same one who'd anonymously funded cancer care for his film crew years earlier. Away from the noise, that hidden kindness finally had room to breathe. And the irony. In leaving Hollywood, Crowe found the one thing every actor spends their life chasing: authenticity. But isolation didn't mean inactivity. The fire inside him hadn't gone out. It had simply changed form. And soon he'd find a way to use it again, on his own terms. At Nana Glen, life followed the rhythm of the earth, not the pulse of Hollywood. Crowe's mornings began before dawn, feeding sheep, checking fences, tending to his cattle. The man who once wielded swords on set now carried hay bales across fields. His hands, once manicured for premieres, were calloused from labor. He called it carpentry therapy, the act of fixing, building, and repairing things as a way of mending himself. Evenings were sacred. Crowe would sit on the veranda with his sons, Charles and Tennyson, guitars in hand, the scent of rain and soil in the air. "No phones, just talk," he'd say. Dinner came from their garden, vegetables, eggs, and homegrown produce, with starlight for dessert. His ex-wife, Danielle Spencer, once said, "The boys know more about animal care than acting." That was his goal all along. He didn't want his children to inherit fame. He wanted them to inherit peace. Neighbors described him as humble, approachable, and surprisingly gentle. One recalled, "He helped me fix my roof after a storm. Never mentioned who he was, just showed up with tools." That humility defined his new life. No red carpets, no interviews, no crowds. Just long days, quiet nights, and a kind of freedom he'd never known before. Yet beneath that serenity, something powerful was happening. Crowe wasn't escaping art, he was redefining it. Away from the industry's control, he found creativity again, unfiltered and unchained. The same fire that once made him unpredictable on set was now fueling something new. Creation, not destruction. And as the world forgot about Russell Crowe, he was quietly building his next act. one that didn't need Hollywood's approval to matter. In the stillness of Nana Glenn, Russell Crowe began creating again, but this time, it wasn't for fame, it was for purpose. He turned his barns into film sets, studios, and sanctuaries of art. His 2022 film Poker Face wasn't shot in some big city studio. It was filmed entirely within 50 miles of his farm, using local crews, carpenters, and kids eager to learn the craft. Hollywood forgets filmmaking is a trade, he told Variety. We taught kids camera work, sound, lighting, skills that feed families. He wasn't done reinventing himself. Crowe's lifelong love for music resurfaced through his blues rock project Indoor Garden Party, recorded in a converted barn with a handful of friends. His collaborator Ben Roberts recalled that Crowe would track vocals in the middle of mustering sheep, laughing between takes as if he'd finally found balance between grit and grace. That gravel in his voice wasn't exhaustion anymore, it was experience. He even launched his own whiskey brand, The Grange, aged in barrels stored inside his machinery shed. The temperature swings out here deepen the flavor, he said to GQ Australia. Every bottle felt like an extension of his journey, imperfect, weathered, and full of character. And through it all, he began writing, a memoir titled Noise to Signal, set for release in 2025. Early leaks suggested it would be raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. It chronicles his fall from Hollywood grace, his divorce, and the cleansing auction where he sold his past to fund his peace. Liberation, he calls it. Crowe had finally mastered the rarest skill in Hollywood, not reinvention for relevance, but reinvention for truth. He wasn't chasing applause anymore, he was chasing meaning. And while the world once knew him as the gladiator who fought for vengeance, he was now the man who found victory in stillness. But Russell Crowe's story doesn't end with self-redemption. What he did next would prove that his greatest role wasn't on screen. It was the legacy he was building off it. As the fame faded, something else took its place. Purpose. Away from flashing cameras, Russell Crowe began using his wealth, his name, and his hands to build something that would outlast him. In 2021, he quietly transformed his childhood home in Auckland into the Crow's Nest, a free film school for underprivileged teens. Each July, a dozen students arrive with nothing but curiosity and leave with a future. We don't teach acting, he told the New Zealand Herald. We teach camera repair, lighting rigs, editing, skills that feed families. One graduate, Leilani Tala, landed a Netflix job soon after. Mr. Crowe told me, be the grip, not the star. Stars burn out, grips build worlds. That single line became his new philosophy. The man who once stood at the center of every shot was now standing behind others, helping them rise. But his impact didn't stop there. Crowe poured his time and money into preserving indigenous culture through the Gumbaynggirr Language Project, an effort to digitize century-old recordings of Aboriginal elders. Linguist Clark Webb recalled, Russell sat with us for weeks. He said, these voices outlast any blockbuster. Even his lifelong love of rugby turned into something bigger. As co-owner of the South Sydney Rabbitohs, he made it mandatory for players to volunteer in their local communities. I want them scrubbing graffiti, not signing autographs, he declared after their 2023 championship. For Crowe, it was never about winning games. It was about shaping men who understood pride beyond fame. Piece by piece, he was rewriting his story, from Hollywood's hothead to one of its quiet humanitarians. And though the world once saw him as the storm, Russell Crowe had become something else entirely. The calm after it. But the true ending to his story isn't found in awards or headlines. It's found in the life he built, far from the noise, one that proves even the fiercest gladiator can find peace when the fight is finally over. In an industry that devours its heroes, Russell Crowe did the unthinkable. He walked away while he still had something left to lose. He had the fame, the money, the power, but he also had the courage to say, enough. While others fought for another sequel, another paycheck, another red carpet moment, Crowe fought for something no studio could offer, peace of mind. At 61, the man who once stood in Rome's Colosseum no longer needs applause to feel alive. He's found it in the sound of rain against tin roofs, in the laughter of his sons, in the soil beneath his boots. The gladiator who once conquered empires now spends his mornings feeding cattle, and his nights playing guitar under the stars, and somehow that feels like the greatest role he's ever played. In one of his final interviews, he said, "Wrinkles are life's subtitles. My face tells my story now, and that story isn't about rage or revenge. It's about redemption. It's about a man who faced the storm inside himself and finally made peace with it." Russell Crowe didn't fade away. He simply turned the volume down, and in the quiet, he became something far greater than a movie star. He became real. Because in the end, true strength isn't about conquering the world, it's about conquering yourself. So what do you think? Who else walked away from Hollywood's chaos to find a life that actually meant something? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more Untold Hollywood Journeys.